Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Not bad. I'm in my car because one of the things I bought a new place recently, and one of the things I found out once I moved in is that cell reception sucks. So I'm actually away from my house in a place that's got better cell reception, and I guess I'll try a cell booster or something. I've heard very mixed reviews about those, but for whatever reason, my house seems to be in a cell shadow, which is
That's
kind of
fine.
annoying.
Is it
So
near like
on the
a
phone all the
mountain
time.
or a hill?
Well, I'm kind of close to the top of the hill in North Van, and I got a feeling that repeaters are probably just below me, and maybe they're on the other side of a little ridge or something. I don't know, but it's the cell signal's quite bad around my place, so I'm gonna try a booster. I don't know whether those really work, but I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, it might work. And also you can just get Starlink. I think that's like $100 a month, and that will be your internet service too.
Right?
Um,
Yeah, I could do that. I mean, because that's what I've been doing lately. I didn't know whether it would work properly with Twitter, so I didn't want to do it for this, but I've been using WhatsApp and Viber and stuff like that, just doing basically Wi-Fi calling because the cell
yeah.
just drops off all the time.
Yeah, that's probably the way to go. Well, it's good to speak with you, Eric. It's we chose a suitably sleepy August trading session. It definitely feels like August is setting in today. A lot of small red on my screen on generally lighter trading volume.
Yeah, same here pretty much. There's not a lot of green today, but also not much trading volume. I mean, I have noticed there's been a pretty good pickup in fundraising over the last few weeks. So, my expectation is the news flow this autumn is going to be fairly strong.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of companies have a lot of cash now, so yeah, they don't really have an excuse to not generate a lot of news flow. Before we get into the juniors, I just kind of want to talk bigger picture because, like, we actually haven't had a real conversation in like 6 months or 7 months. So a lot has happened in 2025. So I kind of want to go back and get your take. Like, I think the last time we spoke, the TSX Venture Composite was like 600 or under 600. Now we're near 800. Gold was probably under 3,000 back then. Obviously, we've seen what gold and silver have done over the last several months. Even the gold bugs index, the Huey, is at like a decade plus high. I mean, the Huey is at levels that it hasn't been at since 2013. So obviously, like the Huey is the big gold miners like Newmont and Agnico and Barrick and stuff, but we've had some really big moves. So I kind of want to get your take on this 2025 bull market in precious metals and sort of where we're at in the cycle.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, normally when you get a major bull move, and obviously this is a major bull move. I mean, gold's at or near all-time highs, so it definitely fits the description of a major bull move. I mean, those tend to be longer. I mean, they're usually um, systemic moves rather than secular moves, if you will. You might have cycles within the bigger cyclical move, but I think that's what we're dealing with here, and those usually last for several years. I mean, you go back to the 70s, for instance, and sort of the early 2000s. I mean, those markets held together for several years, and I don't see any reason why this one should be different. So I don't think we're that far into it. I mean, which inning are we in? Like, I don't know, 3 or 4 maybe. I don't think it's much past that. So, and a lot of the factors that are influencing gold this time around, like central bank buying, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I mean, that is definitely a systemic change. And you can point your fingers at different reasons for it. I think part of what drove it was, Russian sanctions after they invaded Ukraine. And I'm certainly not. I'm not a guy who's against Russia being sanctioned by any means, but I think a lot of other central bankers saw things like U.S. asset seizures and stuff, and I think that freaked out a lot of them. So they sort of went back to buying more gold because probably one of the most important aspects of gold as an asset class is that it's arguably it's about the only, I mean, arguably the only asset class that where you don't have a counterparty really. So you don't have counterparty risk, and I think that's really driving a lot of the central bank buying. I don't see that changing any sign soon. I mean, Trump's in office for another 3 years, so I think you got at least 3 years of uncertainty, and I think this change is probably systemic. I think from going forward, you're simply going to see other central banks increasing their holdings in things like gold and trying to decrease the weighting of the U.S. dollar in their reserves. I think that change is here to stay. And that's a pretty big change. I mean, it also puts a bearish cast on the U.S. dollar, and of course, gold tends to trade against the dollar. So, if the U.S. dollar is going nowhere, that's going to help gold prices. And I think what we're seeing now, and I think we're still early days in this. This is why I don't think we're in the late innings. Is I think we're just starting to see, outside money, if you will, come into the gold market. I think that's what's been driving new highs and things like UE. I think that it's non-traditional investors, not the usual suspects. We're seeing more and more of that. I think it's also the other reason why, sort of intermediates and, well-advanced developers don't seem to be having any trouble raising money. And again, I think it's because you got a bunch of funds that aren't just the usual gold funds, which most of those are doing terribly until quite recently in terms of asset size. A lot of, there's been a lot of money drawn out of those funds, and it's really just come back in the last few months. And again, I think we're early days in that move. I mean, if you're as old as I am, and you can think back to periods like the mid-'90s where it was outside money driving it, and valuations got pretty insane before it was all said and done. And I think we may be entering that sort of market where we're going to see valuations that have guys that have been around as long as us shaking their heads. Not unhappy, mind you. They're pretty happy about it, but it's still kind of like, wow, I paid that much for that? Holy crap. That's where I think we're headed.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's where we're headed to. You always have a good take on sort of the Fed and monetary policy and sort of where the economy's at. So it's kind of interested in your take on the recent data where we get that shock downside non-farm payrolls report, a week or so ago. And then the CPI, I mean, the CPI was fine, but the core is actually starting to edge up again. So not the way the Fed wants it to go. And then this morning's PPI data is just holy cow, it's super hot. So how do you make sense of like some signs that inflation's turning back up again, but the jobs market's falling apart?
Well, I mean, I think the underlying reason for both of those things is largely the same, and that's dysfunction and insanity in Washington, and the tariffs, and the tariff stuff it's really been tough to get your arms around because Trump keeps changing his mind. I mean, there's tariffs and there aren't tariffs, and there's bigger tariffs, smaller tariffs, no tariffs, tariffs next week, tariffs last month. I mean, it's been kind of nuts. He keeps changing course, and that uncertainty, basically I think the certainty, if you will, that whatever the level is, higher tariffs are here to stay probably as long as Trump is around, and the uncertainty of what the tariff levels are because they keep changing, they keep shifting gears with this stuff. That kind of uncertainty is not, at the end of the day, it's not good for business, and I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing payroll data weaken as much as it has. I mean, everybody was freaked out, and rightly so, I guess, by the size of the May-June revisions when the last payroll number came out. But it's not that kind of revision isn't that unusual when the economy is rolling over. I mean, you tend to get larger and more negative revisions of past months when the employment market's turning down. So at that level, I didn't find the revision shocking. They were big, and I do think the message is pretty clear right now. I mean, the U.S. economy is decelerating pretty rapidly. I would say the odds of a H2 2025 recession are getting pretty good right now, and the PPI is the same. I mean, so far at least in the categories being measured, companies don't appear to be passing on tariffs that much yet, but PPI driving ahead of CPI, I got to think CPI is going to start lifting as well. I mean, these companies aren't going to eat these tariffs forever. I mean, at some point they're just going to say, look, we got to charge 10% more. Our margins are too squeezed, and we just can't keep doing this. So I think companies have been trying to hold off, partially because, like I said, the whole situation is so confusing and it changes so often. I think most companies stood pat, but I think if the higher tariffs stick around much longer, you are going to see CPI make the same move you just saw PPI make. I mean, I'm a little surprised how blasé the market is about it. I mean, I wasn't shocked by the PPI number. I was more shocked by the fact that, Wall Street shrugged about it. And the same thing is true of, the payroll number came out, and what did they do? They fired the chief statistician because they decided that numbers were fake news. And that too, Wall Street just kind of went, well, okay. That surprised me. I mean, I would have expected Wall Street to react much more negatively to that kind of thing. And, in a normal market, given how important most of Wall Street views the monthly jobless report as, firing the head statistician, I would have thought that was good for 100 points on S&P easily. And truth of the matter is, everybody just kind of went, well, okay, whatever. I'm surprised the market's being so blasé about it. And so maybe even if we get this deceleration, I'm not sure we're going to see a major downdraft in the S&P. I mean, I don't have a lot of trouble seeing 10 or 20%, but it might be gradual, and that's kind of good news for us, because as long as the gold market holds up, and I think it will, if we get a gradual downward move of 10 or 20% on Wall Street, I don't think it's going to impact funding or share price levels that much in the resource space, because the gold market's one of the few areas that people aren't afraid of right now.
Yeah, I mean, we could literally have the Fed cutting rates over the next 6, 8, 9 months down to 3% on the Fed funds at a time when inflation is above trend and showing signs of moving higher, which is like that's kind of nirvana for gold, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of feels like the 70s, if you will, where once inflation really started to move, gold became a thing, and prices really moved. And even though we're already at 3,400, so it's not like gold's not doing well. It could do better in that scenario. And I get that the White House is upset with Powell, but I wouldn't want to wish Powell's position on anybody, and not because Trump's screaming at him, but because this is a really tough call for him. I mean, I'm sure he looked at today's PPI numbers and just went, oh shit, here it comes, because he's been expecting this kind of tariff reaction for months now, and that's part of the reason why he hasn't been cutting rates. Yet the other reason was, until recently, there was nothing wrong with growth. There was nothing wrong with payroll numbers. There really wasn't a compelling reason to cut rates. Now he's going into a situation where if this rollover in the payroll numbers is real, and I think it probably is, that's one of his two mandates. The other one is stable prices, and unfortunately for him, I don't think he's entering a situation where he's going to get both. He's going to have to pick one or the other, basically. Either try to encourage growth by cutting rates and resign yourself to higher inflation, or hold your rates steady or even increase them to fight inflation, but pretty much guarantee a recession. So I sort of agree with you. I think he's going to err on the side of trying to protect employment. So I think he's probably going to start cutting, which I didn't think he would before. I mean, before this month's data, I was in the I don't see the Fed cutting camp. I didn't see any reason why they should. But it's the way employment's rolling over, he's basically in a no-win situation. Do you want higher unemployment, or do you want higher inflation? Because you're probably not going to be able to win on both. You're going to have to pick one or the other.
Yeah, you make a great point about how the market is just unmoved. I mean, we had that one down day 2 Fridays ago on the payroll, report, big down day, but then it snapped back immediately, and it's completely unmoved on this PPI data. It's acting like it's not real. it's acting like it's transitory. There's that word transitory again. And
Yeah,
still, Fed funds futures are still pricing in almost basically 75 bips of rate cuts by the end of the year. So
right.
basically, the market's saying Powell's going to have to choose jobs over inflation here.
Yeah. Well, and I think in the normal course of events, that's a choice he has to make. I mean, there's only really been one Vizsla, and by the time he showed up, the the proverbial shit had already hit the fan, so he had to really jack rates to deal with inflation. And he was not exactly popular when he did that. I think Powell's going to choose, he's going to choose unemployment numbers over inflation numbers. So I mean, I think 75 basis points by the end of the year is probably logical now, with the way these numbers are moving. And maybe it takes a negative number. Maybe if we get a negative payroll number for August, Wall Street wakes up and freaks out a little. But it's quite surprising to me that really in a normal, what I would consider a normal market, I would think the kind of pissing contest you're seeing between the president and the chief chairman of the Fed. I mean, normally you'd expect a lot of guys on Wall Street to be way more freaked out by that situation, but it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. New normal is crazy every day. Just pick your crazy.
Yeah, this is a wild this is a wild year. It's a simulation of a simulation, as I said before. It's just insanity. And then we're going to get more insanity this weekend from Alaska. I can't wait for those headlines where Trump is going to blame Ukraine for the war.
Yeah,
But let's talk about junior mining, which I think most people are tuned in for that. San Lorenzo Gold. This is a stock
yeah,
that you introduced me to a couple years ago. It's near and dear to our hearts. They're out with some news last week on a new IP survey, some new target identification, and it looks like a drill program is coming. So what are your thoughts
yeah.
on San Lorenzo, Eric?
I mean, I'm still pretty bullish on it. I mean, I think I was the first person following it, and I'm not to be clear, I'm not 100% objective because I'm not a small shareholder. I'm a fairly large shareholder of this company now. I really like um, I really like their project. I just think that's a great project that they've got. It isn't one target. It's three or four separate, very high quality targets. They will have like the IPs. They put out IP results for Cerro Blanco. That's a porphyry target. That's a target that they got the market excited earlier this year when they put out 153 meters, a little over a gram. That's sort of, it looks like it's above the porphyry, if you will. They weren't actually into the intrusion. They were sort of in the Stockbridge zone above it, and that's a pretty good sign to get those kind of numbers. And their EP exploration tells me, that's kind of what this trend in Chile is like. He said it tends to be gold rich, and he said, obviously, I won't complain if I drill into the center of the porphyry and start getting high copper numbers too. But he also said if I can keep pulling holes like this, I'm a happy camper. He's pretty happy with the IP that they just released because there was one area where they extended the line, the northern line, they extended it to the west, and they did that because some of their strongest IP readings were on the edge of the previous line. They had to kind of go past some steep terrain, so there was a spot that got missed on the northern line. They put in a line between the two previous ones, and in that line they were actually able to run the line all the way through. There was no break in it. And there's a very strong chargeability anomaly there. And if you talk to Terry, the VP Exploration, he'll tell you that this region, for whatever reason, the chargeability it really works. I mean, he said you rarely get a chargeability anomaly where you don't get some kind of mineralization with it. He said you just don't get a lot of false positives here. And that sort of fits their history. If you look at the 4 or 5 small drill programs they've done, their hit miss ratio was like, I don't know, 95%. There's maybe 1 or 2 holes that didn't have intercepts. So I think the odds of intercepts here is quite high. There will be a bunch of lines that were done at Arco de Oro. Those should be out any time. They're basically waiting for rock sample results because they had the guys go in and expand the mapping grid there to the north and south. So the labs appear to be pretty slow in Chile right now, but they should be getting those rock results, and that's all they're waiting for to report on that. They've already picked I mean, one thing with Chile is earlier stage stuff like this, the permitting process is actually pretty painless. It's better than almost anywhere else, really. You put in your drill permits, and unless you get some kind of negative comment or a request to move a pad or something, if you don't see something like that within 30 days, you're good to go. You're automatically able to drill. So, and I think they've probably already put in the permit application for Cerro Blanco. They'll wait on Arcador, but they won't need it right away because they'll be drilling at Cerro first anyway. I just think the odds of those guys pulling good holes based on their hit miss ratio right up to now is quite high. The chairman's funding this drilling pretty much on his own. He's lent the company another $1 million, so he's lent them $2 million now because he's got some price level that he thinks is, you know, quote unquote fair. He doesn't want to raise money below that level. He said, I'll lend the company money until I see, you know, people offering financing at a price I think is fair. I haven't really been able to nail him down what that number is, but I'd say it's probably in the mid 40-cent range. Much below that, I just don't think he's going to do a placement. He'll just keep lending the company money. You can't really complain about that.
Well, yeah, I mean the price that he put on this recent loan, I guess the debt can be converted to stock at 35 cents a share. So I guess
Yeah,
that's his bare minimum. It's kind of interesting because the IP sections that they show in the news release, you can see the value. So it's important to put some context on these values because with IP chargeability, it's all relative based upon the region
yeah,
of the world. So there's some targets in like BC or maybe Idaho where you see the IP values above 20 or sometimes 30, they get super high.
yeah,
But like this one, the chargeability anomaly, the high charge is like 10 or 11. But when
yeah,
you compare it to the background where there's a lot of rock that's 0 or 1, that is a very high chargeability anomaly.
yeah. And one of the things I've suggested a couple of people to help them out and stuff. I mean, one of the things those guys need to do, and they're starting to do it now, is they're improving their graphics. The graphics sometimes leave something to be desired. But if you look at the earlier holes at Cerro Blanco, I mean the three that they drilled earlier this year, those are the first holes that were drilled there, and there is quite a strong correlation between the gold numbers and chargeability. You know, it's not. I don't think it's something where you can look at the core and say, yeah, that's going to run for sure, because I mean it's gold, so you got to get assays. But
Hmm.
you know, Terry insists that the correlation is extremely strong. So he said, you know, when I see a chargeability high, I want to drill it. Period. And that's what they're going to do. I mean, that central line that they put in, that's not too bad access-wise. Al told me there's a little bit of road work, but nothing really major. The northern line where they first picked up the anomalies is much more difficult terrain-wise. So I think they'll put a couple of holes in these new areas. I think there's a little bit of road work involved, but I know they and the driller have already been on site and they've finalized the pad location. So I don't think it's like, you know, weeks and weeks of road work, but they probably need to get a blade in there and get those pads ready. But they're pretty much good to go. And you know, Terry's really optimistic because he's all about chargeability. He just said, you know, you can pick your reasons why it works, whether it's, you know, pyrite content or whatever. But he said, you know, high chargeability on this property, you get gold rates. That's just how it always is.
Yeah, it's a gold rich porphyry. Based upon my conversations with Al, I think we are going to see drilling start in August, but we'll
Yeah,
wait for final confirmation of that. That's a very exciting one at Cerro Blanco. Really interested to see those 3 holes and what the results are. Let's talk about another stock we've talked about before that was one of your biggest wins of all time, Founders Metals, but it's been on
yeah.
hard times here in 2025. You know, what are your thoughts on Founders?
I mean, you know, Founders was one of those stocks that every time they put out results, they just kept generating these fantastic drill intercepts, and things seem to have gone a little bit sideways when it comes to that. They haven't been, you know, in recent months, they just haven't been generating that many really hot drill holes, and it's really started to weigh on the market. You know, I don't think we're at the point yet where you can definitively say, you know, Antonio is going to be a lot smaller than people thought. I don't think there's enough drilling in enough places yet to say that. I know part of the the issue has been this was a very heavy rainy season this year, and there are several target areas on Antino that you really can't get at during rainy season. The ground conditions are just too shitty. So I think that's held them back from some of the targets. But I think the market, I don't think they've done a great job at explaining that, frankly. And I think the market, not seeing results from this target or that target, it's really started spooking people. You do get even with projects that work, quote unquote, and end up becoming mines. I mean, you do have periods where, if you look at Great Bear, for instance, there were a couple of periods where they had 50% drawdowns. I mean, it happens with these stocks, but this one's getting to be a little more than 50%, and it is getting a little concerning. I think they've got to latch on to another good zone and generate, 2 or 3 or 4 releases with strong driller and stuff. So I think that's what they need to turn it around at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's also one of these things where this was such a big success in 23 and 24. And sometimes stocks can just get to a valuation where it's just very hard to meet expectations. And I feel like that's kind of what happened here. It's not like
Yeah,
the company is at fault here. It's just they had a really good run. They had good luck with the drill, and it hasn't been quite as good in 2025, right?
yeah, yeah, and it did. God bless them. It did get to the point where they were carrying a $500 million market cap, and obviously justifying that you need several million ounces, which Antino may ultimately have, but to get to several million ounces normally is going to require hundreds of drill holes. That's just how it is. It takes that many intercepts to outline enough tonnage to have those kind of ounces. I don't think that I think the jury's still out on whether they get there. I still think they have a shot, but I definitely like to see. I like to see some good intercepts off a new target, so that they've got, you can see there's 2 or 3 targets where they're going to have large zones, and they aren't quite there yet. There's areas like Lawa where everybody expected to see a lot of drill intercepts by now, and they just haven't shown up, and I think that's spooking people.
All right. And last week, there was a big deal announced with MAI acquiring the Pan mine and a couple other projects from Equinox Gold.
Yeah.
So this is like the big news of the week, the big M&A deal. Obviously, shares of MAI are down on the financing. What are your thoughts on this deal?
I mean, I haven't looked at it that closely yet. I mean, I think Pan's an okay mine. It's not, I'm not sure I'd call it a great mine. It's a little bit grade challenge. So I think that's an issue. And I think, well, obviously the financing, they repriced it by pricing the financing the way they did. That was a bit of a kick in the head to see the pricing on the financing like that. That really kind of murdered the stock for the short term. I mean, it may end up being a good performer if they can increase production at Pan and move some of their other stuff forward. But I think market participants also read that deal as, maybe meaning management's sort of giving up on the Mexican permitting situation. I know the market went from being, 100% negative on Mexico to, I don't know, 50 or 60% negative, thanks to the permit that Heliostar got. But Heliostar's permit was a revision of an earlier permit. It wasn't, there wasn't a huge amount of added disturbance. I mean, it was definitely a positive to see it happen. But I think, I'd certainly like to see a couple of other companies getting open pit permits to give me more comfort on Minera's Mexican assets. I just don't know whether that's going to happen. And I think the market read this as Minera deciding permitting was in fact going to take forever and maybe not even show up in Mexico. And I don't think that's an unrealistic. I don't think that's an unrealistic view. I mean, I kind of thought the same thing when I saw that announcement. Like, they're kind of giving up and getting stuff permitted in Mexico.
Yeah, I mean it's a big pivot for the company. I mean, with the size of the financing and the dilution, it seems like they are pivoting. But I know that management's gonna try to paint a good face on it because they don't want to talk down the value of their assets, right?
Yeah, and I haven't tried to get a hold of Doug, which I'm going to do because a lot of people commented on the fact that Doug's name was nowhere to be seen, and he's
I think
always
he's staying
paid for the
aboard.
company.
Yeah, I think he's staying on board, but I think they just from a messaging and management standpoint, they made a decision to put the other guy's name on this deal because it is really his deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
BTT, Eric, a blast from the past. Michael Carr is almost filling a book for a financing. There's lots of inquiring minds that want to know, did you write a check? And what are your thoughts on BTT now?
Yes, I did. Not the first check I've written to BGT. Hope, I wouldn't say hopefully it'll be the last. I mean, if there's more financing because things are working, then I'm happy to write a check. I mean, it should probably be noted in fairness. I mean, Mike and I are friends. I've known Mike for decades, so there's a few guys like Mike out there where I tend to sort of shrug and write a check when somebody asks me to. But I do like their Nevada project. I mean, it's really early days. I mean, they just got some surface work. They did this recent pH survey, and I've seen a couple other situations. I was going to try to find one of them for Mike to use as an example because I've seen Barry Smee, and Barry Smee is the name of the guy that sort of came up with this pH survey, where essentially you get these acidic conditions where you've got sulfides breaking down and oxidizing, and in theory you can use that to pick up stuff that's completely blind. And they ran some lines over some of the target areas on their project in Nevada, and they got exactly the kind of profile Barry would tell you is indicative of buried mineralization. Plus, they do some nice high numbers at surface. There's not much outcrop, but there's a little bit. They may, I think one thing that may help, I'm hoping will help BGT in the case of both Michigan and Nevada, is not just them so much as their neighbors. In Nevada, Allegiant apparently is going to get really gung-ho about drilling and trying to double their ounces. I know there's a new control group in there, and it's a control group that happens to be very good at managing its market and generating buying. I mean, the other deals I know of that these guys are behind trade extremely well. So just Allegiant trading a lot better probably won't hurt Bitterroot, because they're probably part of the same large-scale mineral system. They're right next door. Same thing is happening up in Michigan. I haven't seen an announcement from Talon, but I've been told that there is in fact a drill rig about 100 meters east of Bitterroot's property boundary. Apparently the Lundin guys that have been sort of a big financing factor for Talon, apparently those guys really prodded them to bring in a third-party rig and start drilling again right next door to Bitterroot. And in that case, it's literally the same system that's being targeted. So if those guys get some joy in a drill hole, that's going to help Bitterroot a lot. Like, I would expect that to have a pretty major impact on the share price. So I mean, I think there's enough irons in the fire here. Mike's doing a small financing to pay for a drill program in Nevada. So I like the targets, and I like the guy running it. So yes, I wrote a check.
Very good. Yeah, that's at Roland that Talon, I believe, has now mobilized a third drill rig. Talon owns 5 drill rigs in total. So they have 2 at Boulder Dash, a third at Roland, I believe, although not confirmed officially by the company, and then 2 at Tamarack, targeting the new massive sulfide, discovery at the Vald Zone. So they're busy. Talon is busy, and yeah. Okay, so that's good to hear your thoughts on BTT. I'm glad you wrote a check. That definitely inspires some confidence. What are your thoughts on Talon, Eric? I mean, this has been a big year for Talon.
Yeah, I like it, and it's not something I've talked about a lot. I do own it. I mean, I started buying it, and in part you can thank Mike Carr for it. I mean, I had a couple of conversations with Mike where he was really, you know, he was sort of going, you know, even though the stock reacted really well, it's not really pricing in that much of this new discovery. I mean, those grades are so high, you know, you don't need a lot of volume, a lot of mineralized volume when you get those kind of grades to get you to, you know, I don't know, you know, pick a number, 1 billion pounds of nickel or whatever. You know, he said that's a very realistic target here. He said this is like a, you know, potentially this is like a Voisey's Bay or even better. And he said, yeah, I know they've got a gazillion shares out, but, you know, a $1 billion valuation wouldn't be surprising if these guys actually have a few million tons of this stuff, because you know, the grades are insane. I mean, the dollar value per ton is so high that a couple million tons of that completely shifts the valuation. You know, I found that, you know, and I saw a lot of, you know, I saw your coverage on it, and I talked to Mike, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. So I started buying it. So I'm not unhappy it's trading the way it is. I do own a bunch of it now. I stayed away from it before because they're, you know, those guys aren't, as I know, you know, those guys are not exactly God's gift to promotion by any means. And, you know, the share structure is just so blown out. It was kind of like, Jesus, I mean, what's it going to take to move that kind of a share structure? Well, you know, we found out what it'll take. It'll take a drilling and stuff like that one.
Yeah, like 35 meters of pure nickel and platinum will do it. Yeah, well, it's been a transformational year for Talon, and yeah, they got 2 rigs going at the Vault Zone, so we should get a lot of news flow over the coming months. You know, that'll be really exciting to see, and hopefully that is good for our little BTT in Michigan as well, if they hit something at Roland, and obviously the drill program at Nighthawk in the Tonopah area of the Walker Lane. I'll give you a choice on what's the next. I mean, we could talk about Vizsla Silver, had an incredible run here, 1.6 billion. We could talk about, you know, Helios Stars, a bunch of names you follow that have had some big moves and a lot of news in 2025.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could talk about both of them. I mean, I think, you know, Vizsla Silver, it's gotten to the point, and you know, in part just because of results, and in part, you know, adding that U.S. listing, I think it's made Vizsla Silver one of the go-to stocks for somebody who's betting on the silver market rather than betting on the company per se. And a lot, you know, I'm not a silver bug, but I'm certainly open to the argument that we're certainly at or close to an inflection point. I wouldn't be shocked to see, you know, silver make a move to 45 or 50 bucks, and I think if that happens, you know, Vizsla keeps going up because it's a very large, very high grade silver resource. It's arguably one of the best, maybe the best undeveloped silver resource out there. So if silver's going up, Vizsla's going to be going up with it. I mean, it's a good, you know, it's not something you're not going to get a 10 bagger from here, obviously, with the valuation it's carrying. But if you want something where it's a little easier for you to sleep at night, but you're betting on the silver market, I think Vizsla's a good choice. You know, Helios Star, I think, is just, you know, management. I mean, Charles has done a great job putting deals together for that company, and you know, they've got a very nice path to, you know, 3x or 4x their production rate over the next 2 or 3 years. So it's, you know, it's a very strong story, and I think it's going to stay strong. I mean, Charles has just done a lot of really smart deals. I mean, he's done a great job, and they're set up now for big increases in production. And of course, you know, at this gold price, that's really been a godsend for Helios Star, because some of the assets I picked up from the old Argonaut assets are kind of like meh when it comes to resources. But you know, at 3,500 bucks gold, you can look pretty smart even mining a mediocre resource. You can generate really strong numbers at these gold prices.
Okay, I got to ask you, who are you thinking about inviting to the Myth in September, which is now 6 weeks away?
Yeah, I do kind of have to get on that. Poor old Matt despairs every time there's a Myth, because I'm usually the last guy to start talking to people about it. I'd like to have SLG there because I think they'll be well into their drill program. I doubt. Well, I mean, I guess it's possible we'll see drill results. I mean, you're getting into the fall, which is the spring there, but it's still pretty early, and so most of the high elevation stuff in Chile, which is most of it, the Salvador project of SLG isn't actually high elevation. That's one of its advantages. But that, I would think labs will be getting less busy then. So maybe they've got drill results by then, but we're probably ahead of drill results. But they'll have several drill holes in by then. I think I'll see whether Onyx wants to come back. They were at the last one. Between now and 6 weeks from now, there should be like a shit ton of drill results from those guys. They're up to 40 holes at this new discovery. So that, the fact they've drilled 40 holes is obviously, to me, that's a positive. I mean, they know what the zone looks like. I don't think there's anything, I don't think there's any diagnostic visual clue that's going to say, yes, this is going to have good gold grades or not good gold grades. They got to run it through the lab. They don't know themselves until they do that, but they're obviously seeing the zone. I don't think they'd have 40 holes into it if they weren't. They're not going to throw drill holes away just for shits and giggles. The fact they put that many into it, they're probably doing. I'm assuming they're probably doing 25-meter fences. I don't think they want to get ahead of themselves, but even so, you definitely got some potential strike length at 40 drill holes. So I'm hoping most of those holes are good, in which case, you'll have a pretty good idea that these guys will have a resource there that's probably going to work. So I wouldn't mind getting them there. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I mean, some of the ones that would be interesting, like Bitterroot, I don't think Mike's got the wherewithal to do a MEF. I mean, I'll ask him if he wants to, I guess, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure who I'm going to invite after that. I might invite Vizsla just because, I just think they're sort of the silver stock. There are a couple of other guys that are much bigger silver bugs than me that have already invited a lot of the usual suspects. I mean, some of those guys may have already asked Vizsla and they don't want to do it for whatever reason. I don't know. I haven't talked to them yet.
What do you think the end game is for Vizsla? I mean, it's at the valuation now where the number of suitors is kind of limited. It's a smaller pool of acquirers. Obviously, they could build the mine, right? But what do you think is going to happen?
I think they're going to push forward with the idea of building a mine. I mean, you're back to the permitting question. There are a couple of things they bought actually have existing. A couple of areas have existing permits. I don't know if that's enough. I don't think that's enough ground for them to go ahead. I mean, some of the newer zones and the more impressive zones, I think, are in places where they will have to permit. I would think they're going to lean towards underground. I mean, a bunch of these zones come to surface, so in theory, at least, they could mine the top of them open pit. They may decide to lean more towards underground, just for simplicity, hopefully, of permitting. And those zones are most of their better zones are wide enough that your production cost is not going to be that bad. I mean, a lot of people think the difference in production cost between underground and open pit is a lot bigger than it really is in most places. A good underground operator could you could make a shit ton of money off that deposit. I mean, the grades are fantastic. But you're right. I mean, they are getting to the point now, and if we do that move to 45 or 50 bucks silver, that's going to add another. I mean, I don't know, 50%. I mean, you're getting in a pretty rarefied financial situation. There's not that many companies that are going to take on a takeover bid that size. So we may see these guys go to production. It was sort of the same way with Silvercrest, right? I mean, Eric took that mine to production, and it wasn't until after it was in production and throwing off fantastic numbers that one of the mid-sized silver companies just kind of sucked it up and made a bid, but he basically had to take that to production. The same thing may happen with Vizsla. They may have to get it in production themselves before there's a real end game here.
Yeah, that's something that maybe some less experienced investors to the junior mining and mining sectors need to understand, that there's something about that $2 billion mark that it's almost impossible for a junior to exceed that valuation level, just because the time value of money, the time, the permitting timeline, and then the risk of ramping up a mine, right? So it's almost like only like Philo or a Voisey's Bay, something that's just absolutely extraordinary, like one of a kind, goes at a price tag above $2 billion.
Yeah, and you can make the argument that Vizsla's project is one of those. I mean, you don't see a resource number that big at those kind of silver grades. Those are pretty few and far between. But even so, you get up to that $2 billion number, you simply get to the point where you're.
Oh, did I lose Eric?
No.
Oh, you back?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you cut out for a second there when you were talking about the 2 billion number.
Yeah, I mean, basically that that 2 billion number you mentioned. I mean, you're right about that. Partially because it does have to be an extraordinary resource, and partially because at $2 billion, how long is the list of potential acquirers? It's pretty short. There's just not many companies that can even approach that kind of takeover size. They just can't.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But extraordinary job by the management team, and Mike Connor advancing that. Just absolutely incredible how it's come together, and dealing with a lot of FUD, along the way.
Yeah.
And even not the most favorable administrations towards mining there in Mexico, but the project speaks for itself.
Yeah, right? I mean, a lot of the guys that have most of their assets in Mexico will tell you that Scheinbaum's she's not like Lula. This is a whole new thing, and it's we'll be back to normal permitting. But it's one thing to say that; it's another thing to see it. And really, I mean, Gila Stars was the only one I know of. I mean, there's been a couple of companies that I think have gotten revised permits. I'm waiting to see somebody get a permit, that's sort of a pristine, a new project that's never been a mine before. I want to see one of those get a permit to really give me the comfort that things have changed down there. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, no, I don't think we've seen it yet. Oh, it's Tom Woolrych. Hey Tom, how you doing? Maybe you want to ask a question to Eric. We're probably wrapping up here in the next few minutes, but yeah, this has been a great conversation, Eric. It's good to hear your thoughts on all this, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in Vancouver next month.
Yeah, I'm trying to get things back to normal. I mean, I think, well, as my subscribers know, I was dealing with floods and black mold and health issues that may be connected to the black mold, and buying a new place and replacing all of my furniture because I didn't trust anything after the black mold issue. So I'm kind of getting to the tail end of all that, Sturm and Drang, and hopefully things get a little bit back to normal now in terms of my output. I'm in the new place, and it's most of what I need to do in terms of making it livable is done now. So I'll be back to normal here, I think, pretty soon.
Great. Tom, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, hi guys. Sorry I came late to the party. I haven't caught anything. Just
Oh, you missed it all. Oh,
yeah,
man, you missed out.
No, I just plonked down on the couch. It's almost 7 p.m. here, and I thought, there's Rob. I'll hear what he has to say. But yeah, so I missed it all.
We talked about San Lorenzo.
Okay, a great little story. Yeah. Hopefully they get drilling soon.
Yeah, I think we see a drill rig there by the end of the month. I know the drill is already, the company and the driller have already finalized the pads at Cerro Blanco. They'll wait for the rock samples to come back, although just if they're going to target based on IP at Arco de Oro, I mean, they kind of already know where the IP highs are. So
I stuck all the new IP in my Leapfrog model, and yeah, they're juicy targets. They make a lot of sense. What I want to see the company do is demonstrate some continuity, demonstrate that those structures come to surface as well.
Right.
So some pushback I've had about the the project is that it's too deep, for 1 gram. But you can see in the satellite the way those white structures come to surface. So I think we're going to see deep weathering there. So there'll be 100 meters of oxide, still carry grade, and then hypogene at depth.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping for too. And Arco de Oro, that comes to the surface. I think you're more about Cerro Blanco than Arco de Oro. I like both of them personally. I've got no problem with the concept of an underground mine. I mean, those veins are thick enough that you're going to have pretty decent production costs underground.
That's what you've nailed it. That's what's got me interested is the potential tonnages at Cerro Blanco.
Yeah.
Arco de Oro is going to be small and high grade. Yeah, management are guiding sort of 1 million ounce type potential there, which I kind of agree with. But I can't really get excited by 1 million ounce explorers these days. There's a dime a dozen. So I want to see 2-3 million ounces. So yeah, we'll see. It's super exciting. Super cheap still.
Yeah, it is.
Are you coming out to the U.S. anytime soon, Tom?
Yeah, mate. I'm at Beaver Creek. Are you there?
You're at Beaver Creek. Oh man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a hellish few days for me. Holy cow.
Yeah. They're brutal. Have I traveled? I'm trying to think if I traveled since PDAC, but I needed like 2 months to recover. So North America, I'm going to go and see a private company called Tundra up in Kugluktuk, way up in the Arctic Circle. That's a copper play that we've invested
that's in Northwest Territories, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, what's it called up there?
None of it.
Sorry.
None of it.
None of it. Thank you. And then I'm going to. I can't go to Hercules, so my colleague Anya's going to go and see Leviathan with Chris, and Willem's going as well. And then after, I'm going to Cisco, which is a lithium company, Q2, a lithium company we've invested in. So yeah, I'm
QTWO.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know it's a guy who's very horny about that one.
Yeah, well, more horny than me. But it's the next lithium mine. Let's say that, if you care about lithium.
Yeah, the problem is I don't care. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, some of those intercepts, you do the gold equivalents, and come on, Rob, you got to get excited.
Yeah, no, it's a nice ore body. I've seen the sections. Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah. No, it's something. Look, I was skeptical about lithium until I joined Deutsche Rohstoff, and they were like, no, you need to look at this. And then we had some really good wins, Patriot, Azure, things like that. So yeah, I've really enjoyed investing in it.
Well, yeah, if you caught Patriot on the run up, I'm sure you enjoyed investing in it.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a win.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of known as a lithium guy, but I'm actually not. I'm a copper guy with a gold problem.
Yeah. I'm a gold guy with a copper problem.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you, Eric. Okay. Thank you, Tom. I'll see you at Beaver Creek, Tom.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. Cheers.
Cheers, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Cheers.